So before we get all the lights out and start setting them up and getting all the modifiers and getting the gels on the lights and really start getting into the nuts and bolts of it, let's just take it back a step and just go over some of the fundamentals of gelled lighting. And as some of you may know, I've been shooting with gels for a very long time, and I think I'm in probably a privileged position that lots of people send me loads of their shots when they're starting out taking gel shots. They want some feedback, you know, hey Jake, what can I do differently? I'm not getting the colors that I want. And I think over those years I've seen sort of the same mistakes being made time and time again, which is fine. You know, I made them, everybody makes them when they start out, because you know, taking gel shots is different to white light shots. And I suppose I've boiled those down into sort of 6 fundamentals of what we need to bear in mind whenever we're using gels. And the first one I want to go over is going to be exposure. Okay, so I've already got a gel set up over here on this light, and I'll show you what I mean. When I'm talking about exposure with gels, I'm referencing the fact that you can't really light meter a gel. Well, you can obviously, but it's not going to give you any information that is useful to you. You can light meter that and it could give you a number, F8, F5.6, but it doesn't mean anything in relation to this. When you're choosing the power of the gel, you're choosing the color to a certain extent. Because if we have this light on its lowest power, then it's going to take a shot, which is, you know, with this orange gel we've got on here, it's going to take a shot with almost like a golden ochre, sort of golden brown type color. Okay, whereas if we turn the power of this light right up, we're going to get like a sunburst yellow. There's no right or wrong there. That's not, you know, there's no, that's the correct color that gel needs to be. It's down to your personal preference. So let me just show you what I mean. So I've got this light on the lowest power. This is a 500 watt head, just set to the lowest there. The camera I've got on here is ISO 100, shooting at 125th of a second, using the aperture of 5.6. I'm not going to change that. Nothing's going to change apart from the power of this light. So let me take a shot with it on its lowest setting. Let's have a look, see what we got. So yeah, so that's not much light coming out of that gel. So we're getting a deep golden brown on there. Okay, so I'm just going to turn the power of that light up 1 stop, so doubling the power. Let's take another shot, not changing any settings on the camera. Okay, so we're starting to get more of a richer orange in there now. Turn it up 1 more stop, so doubling the power again. Nice. Okay, so in the middle there, in the hot spot, we're starting to see more of a yellow color rather than an orange. And then let's go all the way up 1 more stop. Perfect. Okay, so now we're getting almost brilliant yellow throughout the entire frame. There's no right or wrong color there. It's up to you as to what color you want to go for. It's your preference. And I would advise anybody, if you've got gels at home yourself, take them out, put them, you know, fire it against a white wall, different exposure values through your light, and see what different colors you can get, because all of the gels, whether it be red, pinks, blues, they're all going to have variations in colors throughout them. So yeah, make sure you give it a go and see what you can get. So that's exposure. So number 2 in our fundamentals of gelled lighting is light contamination. This is probably the biggest one that everybody has the most trouble with. And again, it's probably a bit easier if I just show you. So we're just going to bring the house lights down in here so we can actually see what's going on. So we can see now with the house lights down, we've got a strong saturated color here with this gel. We've just got that one light on in the set. There's no other lights. Now what usually happens is as soon as you start bringing in other lights, they'll start to add, especially with white lights like this, if you're, you know, photographing a model and you want to put a white light on her, quite quickly you'll see that this can wash out the set or the color that you've already crafted back there. Granted, you would never have the lights like this, but I'm just trying to show you what it looks like. And I take real care in precisely getting these lights exactly right. And we'll be going over that in more detail later on in the tutorial, because there's plenty of ways that we can place the lights or flag the lights to make sure that this light contamination doesn't happen, and we always maintain this strong saturated color. So number 3 in our gelled lighting fundamentals is actually going to be our lighting modifier. That plays a huge role in how the gel actually looks, whether it be on a background or on a model. Obviously there's tons of modifiers out there, but I'm going to split them into sort of two key ones, and that's really going to be our hard lighting modifiers and our soft lighting modifiers. Hard light modifiers are sort of grouped into, so we've got ones like this, the snoot, okay, and then we've got just a classic reflector dish with a grid. And I mean, obviously the most obvious thing that these two things have in common is just their size, okay, they're smaller. As a general rule, smaller modifiers like that tend to create a much harder light or a much harder look. And some of the characteristics of that when you start putting a gel on there is going to be obviously a bit more contrast in the light. So that contrast is going to translate into more saturation in a shot. The modifiers are a bit easier to use. So if you're angling around a snoot or a honeycomb, you can see exactly like a pool of light where that's going. So that's a little bit easier to use. Also, the transition from light to dark is going to be a lot quicker, like I mentioned with the contrast, but it means that the shadows are going to be a lot darker, if not go straight to black quite quickly. And you're also going to see a lot of bright highlights. So the hard light modifiers are great if you want to capture more of a specular highlight on a model's skin or in the hair and that sort of thing. The other ones we're going to be looking at is the soft light modifiers, and these ones are, the most obvious one that we've all used at some point is the softbox, and one that I use a lot of, which is the umbrella. Okay, regardless of whether it's white or silver, it's still going to be a soft light modifier. And again, one of the defining characteristics of those two is going to be the size. So these are a lot larger. Okay, so they're going to be spreading our gel or our color over a larger area. So conversely to the hard modifiers, these are going to have a little bit less contrast. Okay, so there's not going to be as much saturation in color, but it's going to be more of a wash of color. So it's going to be very delicate in terms of a light with regards to if you have a hard light shone onto that as well, it's just going to wash it out. So it's a little bit harder to use, in my opinion, but they can give more of a softer color, which especially that softer tone is quite popular at the moment. Some other characteristics of the soft light modifiers are that the shadows aren't going to be as dark. So it's going to be quite difficult to get those deep, dark black shadows, and you're not going to get the same blown out highlights or specular highlights with some of these modifiers. The only other key thing to bear in mind with soft light modifiers is the saturation. So they're not going to have the same contrast as the hard light modifiers, so that saturation is not going to be there. So that's really worth bearing in mind when you're choosing which modifier to actually shoot with. So that's the different lighting modifiers when using colored gels. I'm going to be using both of these throughout the tutorial, so I'm going to be using the hard light modifiers with some gels on them, and we can see how that looks. And we're also going to be using a lot with our soft light modifiers, umbrellas especially, and we can see the difference that they give, the difference in color, the difference in tone, the difference in contrast that both of these two types of modifiers give. So number 4 in our fundamentals of gelled lighting is going to be angle of incidence. Granted, that doesn't sound very exciting, but really it's just a fancy way of saying it's the position that the light has in relation to the model, the background, the subject. Okay, and today we've got Justin, our beautiful model, is going to be helping us explain that. And like I said, if you had your gel, like we've seen before, if you just shine a gel directly at a background, straight on, it's going to create more of a circle of light. But you'll also notice that it has a brighter spot in the middle. That's what we refer to as a hot spot. Now, as we've seen with exposure, that's going to have a different color in the middle than it is to the outside. But if we were to start positioning some of these gels on our model here, we're going to see that the same thing is going to happen. So at the moment, I've got these gels pointed directly at Justin's head, so right onto his head here. Okay, so the brightest part is hitting his head. Now it's great, but I mean, we don't have a lot of shiny objects here. It's not like you haven't got a bald head, or we're not, no platinum blonde hair or anything like that. So those highlights aren't going to blow out very quickly, but it's worth mentioning that there's probably more color around the outside of that hotspot. Okay, so for example, when I have my lights up here, I angle them just past the model. Okay, so this light, so the hotspot is now here, but that color that I want is now hitting my model. Okay, so the brightest part is going past him, and it's almost like I'm feathering the light past him. And I would do exactly the same on the other side. So whenever you're positioning your lights, think about the angle of incidence or the way in which they're hitting your subject, because that's going to affect the color that's actually hitting your subject. So the brightest part, make sure you're sort of firing that past them, and if you want more color, then you're going to feather that light so you can get all that saturation. That's simply angle of incidence. Number 5 of our fundamentals of gel lighting is going to be gel attachment. And I'm not trying to be patronizing when I say this, because trust me, I've been working in the studio for many years and I've had many assistants over the years who've used all manner of things to attach gels to lights. From simple just clear tape to masking tape, parcel tape, any tape you can possibly imagine that they've had all over it. And a lot of those tapes are just completely useless. Most of the modifiers that we use, especially if you're using a modeling bulb, are going to get quite hot. And that heat is going to render that tape pretty much useless within a matter of minutes. Now, the one thing that I always use is black gaffer's tape. That, for me, is the best thing because it maintains its stickiness when it's hot, but it also, when you peel it off, it doesn't leave a sticky residue behind like most of the other tapes do. Don't get it confused with the silver duct tape, because that, it's great for water and that sort of thing, but when it gets hot, it just becomes this sticky mess. So yeah, don't avoid that at all costs. And when I mean gel attachment, I mean that our gel has to cover the entirety of the light that is exiting your modifier. So whether you put the gel so it's covering the flash tube entirely, or whether you're just putting it so that it's covering the complete face of a softbox, the most important thing to remember is that any white light that escapes from your modifier that isn't gelled is going to destroy your color, because that white light is a lot more powerful than your colored light. So that's just going to contaminate it. And that's where a lot of people fall down. There can be a tiny gap that's bouncing around the room that you don't realize. It's going to make a big, big difference. So yeah, gel attachment is really, really important. That's number 5 of our fundamentals of gel lighting. So last, but by no means least, is number 6 of our fundamentals of colored gels. And this one is the distance of your colored gel from your subject, whether it be a background or your model, the distance of your gel to the background or model, and how that can affect the color and tone and look of the gel overall. This is probably going to be easier to actually show again. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring the house lights down here so that we can actually see that. So with this particular gel, we can see that it's really quite close to the background. Nothing wrong with that, it's just going to give you a different look. But let's take a shot, see what that looks like. So I'm just going to pull right back here so we can see the whole background. Take a shot, okay. So we can see from this shot we've got a really bright sunburst yellow center, that's our hot spot, and then it just fades out really quite quickly to quite a dark vignette. But if we bring that back, this light back, so bring it way back to about here. Now I have brought that quite a distance away, so I'm just going to bring the power of that light up, okay, just to compensate. And let's take another shot of the background. How that looks. Okay, so completely different. We can see that from this shot, we don't really have a hot spot. It's more of a blanket tone, right from the center all the way to the edge. And that's how you create more of an even tone across like a white backdrop like that. If you don't want those shadows around the outside, if you don't want that vignette, just bring your gelled light further back. And the same thing is going to apply on models as well. Okay, if you want more of an even tone, just bring that gelled light further back. So those are the 6 fundamentals that we need to know if we're going to be using gelled lighting. And all of those 6 are going to play a major role in all the setups I do from now going forward. If some of those don't make complete sense at the moment, they certainly will do later on when we start bringing in more context like modifiers and models and that sort of thing. So yeah, stick with it and it'll certainly make a lot more sense when we start to bring everything together. So let's get started with our first setup. Okay, so let's jump straight into our first setup. This one is going to be our gelled flare setup. Okay, now, although gelled flare is in there at the end, the key learning points that I want to go over in this one is going to be just the basics of white lighting. Okay, if we can learn the basics of some of these white lighting techniques before we add gels, then it's going to really help keep everything super clean later on. We're going to be doing it one step at a time with pretty much one light at a time. And the benefit of that is that we can really build the entire shot step by step, but at each step you actually get a great image. Even from the first light, you get a cracking image straight away. The second light, third and fourth light, they're great images. And then adding the color right at the end, This is all about creating that final extra oomph. You know, how can we catch our viewers' eyes? How can we keep the attention for just that fraction of a second longer? You know, our clients or our audience is seeing thousands of images a day. How do we stop them for just a second, go, that's interesting, how is that done? Or that looks nice, or that looks engaging. And that's really what this is all about. So if we can create an engaging portrait like this, step by step, then it's just going to be just a great foundation for everything else that we're going to build on top of that throughout the rest of the tutorial. So let's go over the key objectives for this setup. The main one in my mind is going to be light placement. This is so crucial, and it's mandatory in any shot, whether it's even just one light. If you get that light correct, it's going to make such a big difference to if it's not correct. Okay, and it might not seem obvious, but I'm going to be showing you ways of, I can even show you how it looks when it's bad, when it's done bad. We can show you what can be done and what to look out for. That's going to be my main objective in this one. We're also going to be looking at how to obviously create that flare. Okay, there's certain tips and techniques that we can use to enhance and get more flare into a shot. And we're also going to be looking at contamination of light, how to keep lights separate from one another. So keeping them totally separate. We don't want mixing any shadows or weird highlights or anything like that. So really going over some core basic principles that are just going to help lighting, gelled or otherwise, throughout the entire tutorial. In this setup, we're going to be using the following gear: the Nikon D600, a 28-105 lens, and also a lens baby. I'm going to be using a right angle bracket, diffusion filters, the gels, the flash sync, 4 strobes, 2 reflectors with grids or honeycombs, a silver 22-inch beauty dish with diffusion cover, 1 small softbox, a floor stand, 3 light stands, a fan. We're going to be using a dark backdrop, black or dark grey is absolutely fine, and obviously our crew, which is going to be our hair and makeup. And I strongly recommend that you use hair and makeup on your shoot, because I see it as an investment. If I spend a little bit extra time and money getting the correct hair and makeup, especially makeup, then it's less retouching time for me at the end of the day. So that's absolutely everything that we need for this gelled flare setup. So let's start building our set. Let's take a look at our set here for this gelled flare setup. At the background, we've got a dark background. I went black or dark grey. We're not going to have any light falling onto it, so as long as it's dark, it's just going to make your job a little bit easier. So that's back there. We've got our stunning model, Smiler. She's going to be our model today. And we're going to start off with just our first light, which is going to be what I refer to as our key light. And on this key light, I've got a 22-inch beauty dish here. Probably my favorite modifier of all the modifiers that I use on my shoots is going to be the beauty dish. They come in a white and a silver. We're going to be using the silver today just to give probably a little bit more contrast. The white one is going to maybe a little bit softer. The silver one is also a little bit cooler in terms of color temperature and going to give you sort of stronger highlights as well. Okay, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, we're going to be using the silver one here, and on the front we've got what we call a diffusion cover. Okay, that's just going to soften it up even more. So it's just going to soften off that, maybe just soften some of those highlights as well. Okay, so we're going to have that on the front. It's probably also worth mentioning about how I've got this set up. Some of you may have noticed that it's at an angle, so it's actually off to one side. It's because I'm using what I refer to as a right angle knuckle bracket up here at the top. So the light would normally just sit straight upright like that. But we're going to be taking quite a close-in headshot, which is going to be concentrating a lot on sort of beautiful light, beautifying light, keeping some of those shadows nice and clean. Us as photographers or humans, we look for symmetry. And symmetry is a great way to show beauty. So what I want to do is I want to keep that light as straight on to our model as possible. Now, obviously, if we had it straight on, we'd have a light stand in the way. So you'd be shooting either around it or it'd be getting in the way and that sort of thing. So, of course, one thing you can do is get a big boom in there, which is great, but it can be quite costly. And sometimes you just don't have the room to have a big boom arm and setting it all up and that sort of thing. And all you really need is just a tiny gap just to shoot straight underneath it, and just putting it on the side like this via the right angle bracket, just going to give you more than enough room to get right underneath it and keep that light directly in front of the model. So you're getting that symmetrical lighting. Throughout this entire tutorial, you're going to hear me referencing subjective and objective lighting. It's just a way that I like to break some of my lighting down to sort of work out some of the exposures and how I want certain lights to look. Most of the time, if not all the time, when I'm referring to my key light, I'm referring to the objective light. So that has an objective lighting, which is it has to fulfill a look. It has to be correctly exposed. Okay, so this is going to be lighting my model, so her skin has to look natural. So I would light meter that, make sure that's looking perfect, and then I would move on to the other lights, which are probably going to be more subjective. Okay, that's up to me as to how I want those lights to look. Do I want more or less fill light? Do I want brighter or darker hair lights? Do I want more vivid colors with the gels? Those are subjective lights. They're very difficult to actually light meter because it's dependent on the model, your environment, what they're wearing, all those sorts of things. But for this one, the key light, this is my objective light. So let's talk about the placement of that. With the actual light placement of this, talking about distance, we're going to have the model probably just a couple of feet away, or rule of thumb is arm's length away in your mind, so it's actually pretty close. I see a lot of people using a beauty dish like 10, 15 feet away. You're just losing all the quality of that light, in my opinion. That's more of just a spotlight then. This beauty dish is a very flattering light. In fact, if you get one, maybe shine it against a white wall, take some pictures, and you'll see that across from edge to edge, it's the same exposure. It's very, very limited hot spot on it. So it gives a very beautifying look. But that really works when it's at this specific distance. In terms of height, I want it above the model's eye level. Okay, there are very few rules when you're actually shooting, but I would say that this is really one of them. It's pretty much mandatory that you always have the beauty dish or your key light, any key light or your objective light above the model's eye level. We never ever want to be lighting any of us from below. When we're seeing one another outside, the sun's above us. If we're indoors, there's lights on the ceiling. We're always seeing one another when we're being lit from above. If your key light, when it starts drifting below, the eye level and that sort of thing, we're getting, the shadows on tops of the cheekbones and on tops of the, the nose and that sort of thing. It looks awful. It's like horror style lighting. Okay, so we always want to have our key light above our model's eye level. I've angled this light down at about 45 degrees, okay? I want to just point it down directly onto her because we put it above, so it's going to be angled down. But I also don't want to make sure that it's not too high because I still want to see the catch lights in the model's eyes. And the catch lights are just a reflection of the actual light itself, okay? That's what gives eyes the sparkle, that twinkle. We're getting a lot of light in there. It's going to give us more color in the eyes as well. I recently saw a film, in fact, where they digitally removed the catch lights on somebody like lying down. They showed them sort of like dying, as it were, and just all they did was digitally remove the catch lights, nothing else. And it's so powerful when you see it done like that. You can really see how much of a difference it makes when you remove that sparkle from somebody's eyes. Okay, so really, really, really always try and get those catch lights into the eyes. And a good rule of thumb again on that is maybe keeping them at sort of like 10, 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock, in that sort of range. That's going to give you the best possible look. So I'm happy with the placement of my beauty dish, my first key light, okay? And now I'm going to get started with taking some shots and see what that looks like. Before I pick up my camera though, I just want to just briefly outline some of the settings, because some people make this, it's maybe the first time they're actually using studio strobes. They may be used to using natural light, really just outside, shooting natural light and their exposure triangle. They're used to thinking about the sun being this unchangeable quality in our shots. Okay, well, this is completely different. Outside you can't change the power of the sun. Inside, we have complete control of our suns, our lights, okay? And it's really important to get. I see a lot of people coming into a studio and shooting for the first time, and they're picking up their camera and they're taking some shots and they're adjusting their cameras around the actual light itself, rather than turning the power of the lights up and down. So for me, when I'm in the studio and I know that I have complete control of all of my lighting, I'm gonna have the ISO on my camera set to 100, okay? That's gonna give me the best quality. Also, I'm going to choose the shutter speed based on my camera, which is about 125th of a second. I know it's faster for some cameras, and I know some people shoot a lot faster, like 250th, but be careful when you start opening up the apertures on some of those lenses, that you'll start to see the shutter coming across. So for me, 125th, you're safe with pretty much anything. Those two settings don't change. ISO 100, shutter speed of 125th, that's fixed. The only thing that does really change for me is going to be the F number, or the aperture, and that's based on my personal sort of look and style and what I want to get out of a shot. Okay, so you can shoot at everything at f/16 if you want. You can shoot everything at 2.8 if you want. Me, I'm happy with, especially a headshot like this, about how much I want to get in focus. There's nothing in the background, so I don't need to get anything in focus back there. I just want maybe just a touch of a shadow of it dropping off into the hair. I want the eyes and the nose to be in focus. So somewhere around f5.6 is where I'm going to be going for. So that's what I've got my camera set up to here. Okay, 125th, ISO 100, f5.6, and I'm going to change everything else around the camera. So I'm going to be shooting tethered here. So let's just take a couple of shots and see what we're looking like. Okay, let's have a look. So let's bring that up a bit bigger. Okay, so as luck would have it, it's pretty much bang on, okay, which is good. I don't have any issues with anything there, really. Like I said, remember, this is an objective light, okay, so I'm looking to make sure that some of the skin tones are correctly exposed, which they are, really. It's pretty much, I wouldn't change anything there. It's pretty much spot on. So this shot in its own right is perfect. I mean, I know people who make successful careers out of taking shots like that. Single light, beauty dish. I mean, it's gorgeous lighting, gorgeous model. It's a totally usable image. But for me, I'm just going to maybe just add a couple of extra bits here to show what can be done. And the next one for me is going to be the fill light. Okay, I just want to add a bit more detail underneath the chin and jawline there. Okay. So now we're ready to move on to step 2, which is adding our fill light. So I'm now ready to bring in my second light. This is going to be my fill light. And I'm using a small softbox here. This is a 60 by 60 Broncolor softbox. And I've got it on a floor stand. So it's right down low, right on the ground. And I want it directly in front of our model here. Remember, with this first key light, our beauty dish, we had that straight on. So we don't want any shadows to one side. So I don't want this fill light to be off to one side either. I don't want to create any shadows coming across the model. I want it straight underneath as well. Okay. You can use a reflector as well. I know lots of people do that, but I prefer just the added control of an additional strobe, because no matter how good a reflector is, it's never going to bounce back as much light or anything like that. So this is going to give me a lot more control. So that's what I'm going to go for here. And it's worth mentioning the angle that I'm actually pointing this at. Lots of people think, put that fill light down and they just angle it straight up at the model's face, directly up at the model's face. But I'm going to angle it a little bit further down than that, because I actually want it pointing directly in here, because I want to try and capture some of this softer light that's around the edge of this softbox. Every modifier has a slightly brighter center or a hot spot, and towards the outside of that modifier is going to be a little bit of a softer light, and I want that softer light to be on the face. If I point it straight at her, we're going to be getting that slightly harsher glow. So I'm just going to angle it at the torso, and let's take a shot of that, see what that's looking like. Okay, just put these on so we can see what's going on. Okay. Is everything firing? Let's have a look. So, I mentioned that this second light is going to be an objective light, so we can have it, whatever power that we feel looks good, but we don't want that to contradict the rule that we said about lighting from below. And this is way too bright. At the moment, we can see we've got a lot of light underneath the nose, so that actually, the bottom of the nose is brighter than the top of the nose. We said about when we had our light from above, we want the shadows underneath. This is way too powerful now, okay? And it's quite flat. We can almost not even see Smiley's jaw, jaw at all. It's just almost blending straight into the neck. Okay, so we need to turn that way down. So for reference, it's actually at the same power as this one. Okay, so let's see what that looks like now. Okay, that's nice, that's good. So if we just quickly snap back to the first shot we took without that fill light, okay, we can see how dark the shadow is underneath the jawline, okay, and we can see that once we bring in that fill light, we added a lot of light underneath there. I still think that might actually be a bit too bright. I'm just gonna bring it down even more, maybe half a stop on there. Okay, let's take another shot. See what that's looking like. Okay, that's good, that's better. Perfect, okay. So we've got a lot more detail underneath the jawline than we had before. If we just skip back to that first shot and you'll see what I mean. Really deep dark shadows, okay? So not much detail there at all, and now we've got a lot more detail back underneath the jawline. So looking at that shot, some people may say, maybe that's a bit too much light still underneath. Oh, Jake, I like maybe a little bit less light underneath the jawline. I like to see a bit more contrast, and I agree with you. Definitely it can be nice to have that contrast. But for me, when I'm setting up my lights, remember I'm thinking about the end goal in mind. I'm thinking about the end shot, the final product, and I know that I'm going to do some post-pro on all of my shots. They all go through that process. And I also know that I'm going to be adding a lot of contrast back into these shots later on. Now, if we don't have much light underneath the jaw there, we have a lot of shadow and that sort of thing, and we start adding contrast, then that's going to quite quickly drop off into black. And we know that when it drops off, when shadow drops off into those deep dark blacks, then you lose the detail. So you can't add as much contrast. If we add more light in there now, I know that I can add quite a lot of contrast later on, and I'll still have as much detail as I possibly can. So with these two lights, again, we have a usable shot. We see this type of lighting all the time. This is very saleable, perfect lighting like this with our key light up above, our beauty dish, creating that nice sculpting light underneath, symmetrical lighting, and then we're just filling it in with our softbox from below, just giving us a bit more detail in the shadows. I think we're ready to now bring in our next set of lights, which is going to be our hair lights. Okay, so we got our key light, our beauty dish, which that takes a great shot just on its own. We've then added the fill light, just to add in a little bit of light underneath the jawline there. Again, another usable shot. But for me, I want to separate my model from the background. Okay, obviously we're fortunate today that Smiley's got blonde hair, like lightly colored hair, and we've got a darker background, so she's automatically gonna be picked out from that. But with any image, you want to create that depth. Whether you do it with lighting or depth of field, you want to create that separation between background and model. So I'm going to be doing it with lighting. And you can imagine it, if we'd taken this shot and she'd had like really dark brown or black hair, it would be quite difficult to pick her out from that background. So I'm going to be using two hair lights at the back, okay? And these are going to be symmetrical to her. So they're going to be placed pretty much identically on either side. What's important to remember when you're using hair lights or any light behind the model is, again, to have it above eye level, okay? We spoke about the importance of having our lighting above the model's eye level with our key light, but the same thing applies. We want this lighting to look like it's coming from the same place. All these things might seem like minor details, but they all add up to have a big impact on the overall impression of the image. If we had these lights too low in terms of our height, then we'd get shadows on tops of the shoulders. If we didn't have any hair here, we're taking like a male headshot or something like that, you'd get shadows on tops of the ears. And also we wouldn't see any hair lights coming up towards the top. We want to make sure that we have this light high enough so that we're getting all of that. So we're getting a nice, clean separation, okay? For these two lights, I'm also going to be using just a standard reflector, but I'm going to be popping in some grids. Okay, all these grids do, or honeycombs, all they do is just have a bit more control over the light. At the moment, this light is just coming everywhere. It's going to be bouncing around, especially if you're in a small environment. But what these will do is they really channel the light directly where you want it. Okay, so I'm going to pop these two in. Just pop this on. We're going to bring it up nice and high and just angle it back down so that we can see what's going on. Okay. Now at the moment I'm going to set the power of these. Just a good place to start is the same as our key light, our beauty dish. We can work with it from there, but at the moment this is going to be a subjective light as well, remember? So it's up to us as to how powerful we have this light. If we had a model here and she had like a jet black, big frizzy afro, that's just going to soak up a lot of light. You might actually need more light back here. If you had somebody in there who had maybe platinum blonde hair or something like that, you're going to need to turn that way down. Otherwise, those hair lights are just going to, they're just going to go straight out. Okay, just going to blow out the highlights. So I know that Mr. Broncolor has made an app for us all, but I'm a bit old school, so I'm just going to be using the rack and pinion dial at the back there to adjust the power. So let's put those there. Now these have to be symmetrical in terms of their distance and height and that sort of thing, and it can be quite difficult to do if you're back here. So don't be afraid to ask the model. If you just want to spin around for me, Smiler. Okay, spin around. Are these two the same height? Yeah. Yeah, looking good? Okay, cool. So that's the right height, the angle. Let's turn that a little bit. Okay. One other thing that I want to speak about here is the angle at which we point these towards our model's head, okay? We're going to be speaking about angle of incidence. This is one of those incidents where we don't want to point it directly at the model's head because, again, remember we said about our hotspot with our fill light? Honeycombs have a hotspot as well. Okay, so I actually want to get a little bit of the softer light on the edge of these grids. So I'm just going to angle it just past our model. So just almost like it's feathering the light past her. And I'm obviously going to do the same on this side. Looking good. Okay, so make sure they're both at the same power. Okay, you want that symmetry in that lighting. Looking good. Okay, right, let's take a shot. See what we got. Okay, so they are way too bright, okay? Smiler's got very light colored hair, so we're just blowing out the highlights just hugely on that. So there's going to be a lot of clipped whites in there, which I don't want. So I'm going to turn these way down. Okay, I'm probably going to go down maybe 2 stops. Let's see what we get with that. We can always come back up. Obviously, if we were using the app, I wouldn't need to get my belly out. Cool. Okay, so they're both 2 stops darker now. There we go. Lovely. Love it. Okay. So we've turned those lights way down, but it means that we're not blowing out the highlights anymore, which is great, okay? And we're actually starting to see more of the color back in Smiler's hair, okay? And that's really important because we don't want to blow it out with highlights so it almost changes the color or the look of our hair. It's also worth bearing in mind with any of our lighting or the way that we view images is that it's human nature for our eyes to go to the brightest part of an image. Now, in that previous shot, the brightest part of our image was the hairlights. So your viewer's eye is just going to go straight to that. That's not where you want your viewer's eye to go. You want your viewer's eye to stay focused on your model, okay? So just by turning that down, this is far more of a flattering lighting, okay? And we're getting nice lighting all the way across, all the way down. Now that we've added all of our lights, this is a complete setup, it's finished. And this is how to really cleanly light a white lighting setup. And I spoke about separation of light right at the start, and this is as separate as it's going to get. It's absolutely perfect lighting. So now I think it's a great introduction to start bringing in the color. So we're going to start adding some color into our shot now, and whenever you start to add color onto your lights or anything like that, you want to bear some basic color theory things in mind, okay? Think about what the model's wearing, you know, what colors has she got on in terms of styling and that sort of thing. Think about your environment, you know, is there a different color in the background and that sort of thing. You've got to bear that in mind. And also bear in mind just basic color theory that we know from our color wheel. So we're going to be actually adding two separate colors onto our lights here. So two different colors. You can use the same color if you wanted, but I want to use two different ones just to make it a little bit more interesting. And whenever I'm using two colors in an image, I don't have to worry about styling. Styling is really neutral. I don't have to worry about the background. There's no colors back there. So I can do whatever I want with my gels now. I want to use two colors, so I'm going to be using complementary colors. So they're always going to be colors that are opposite one another on our color wheel, okay? So there's lots of colors that you can use that might not look as good as others, okay? Or at least be mindful that color is such a strong provider of imagery to us. Think about if you're going to be adding like a red and a green gel back here, that's going to quite quickly look like a Christmas card, okay? And that's fine if you're shooting a Christmas card, but if you're not, you know, just be mindful of it. Those two colors are so strong with us visually, especially here in the West, that you want to be mindful of using them ever, really. Another one to think about is maybe blue and red, okay? Cinema and TV have just told us repeatedly over the years that whenever you see blue and red lights, you know, it's a police chase or a crime scene, those sorts of things. And it might look great, but just be mindful of how that's coming across to your viewers, okay? And you can certainly use that to your advantage if that's the sort of look you're going for. But for me, at the moment, I'm going to be using the orange and blue. Those of you that see my work will know that I use orange and blue a huge amount. And film directors and cinematographers will use orange and blue all the time. I think it's something about like maybe the orange with like the beach, the sunset, that sort of thing. It's, you know, it's always a, you know, really pleasing color. And the blue, you know, the sea, the sky, those sorts of things, they work really well together. Graphic designers will use those color combinations with logos all the time as well, okay? So let's put these two gels back here. Let's get those up. So we've attached our two gels up there, and I know I would probably bang on to people about, oh, be mindful of making sure that the gel is completely covering your modifier. That's true. What's happening here, I know it just looks like I've just draped them on over the top, and to a certain extent, that's all you need to do. We're using the grids, remember, and those grids are just channeling that light. So even though I can see straight through the gel here, I'm not seeing any white light. That grid is maintaining it, so all of the light is coming out of there. Same on this one as well, okay? So let's take some shots with those gels on. Let's see what that's looking like. It's probably worth mentioning as well that whenever you put anything in front of your light, whether it be a modifier or a gel or anything like that, you may have to adjust the power of your light, okay? Now there are certain gels that are going to be thicker than others, should we say. So like some of the deeper colors like reds or like navy blues and that sort of thing are going to need maybe more power attached to them. Lighter colors like maybe the brighter pinks or the yellows are just not going to need as much power added, okay? So this is looking really good, you know, straight away, straight off the bat. I might just say that the orange is looking good. I'm not going to adjust the power on that, but just to even it out, I'm probably going to add a bit more power onto our blue light back here. Okay, I'm just going to add half a stop on here, just to make it a little bit brighter. Another thing as well with these gels just draped over the top like this is the fact that, you can see that these are going to get quite hot with the modeling bulbs on full, okay? But with these draped over like that heat, some of that heat can come out. It's definitely going to extend the life of your gels. Right, so that's extra half a stop on there. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, let's take a look. When I was shooting without these gels on, I mentioned about the hotspot and having a little bit more color around the outside of a hotspot. And you'll notice that here we're getting rich color from our gels, okay? And that's because maybe if we angled them in, you'd start to see those highlights blowing out a little bit, but I want to have that color. I don't want to see the hotspot. So it really helps to maximize the saturation with your colored gels. So now that we've added those colored gels, again, we've got a usable shot. And I've certainly taken lots of shots like this in the past where it's just nice and clean, just adding a little bit of color just to pick out some of the highlights. Great image. And you can obviously play with different colors now and switch them around. But for me, I just want to add a little bit something extra. I'm a little bit concerned about the amount of dead space that's actually above the model's head, just on the either side there. It's just quite dark. And I was thinking if we've got a little bit of color there, why not add even more color? And I'm going to do that with some colored flare. Getting flare into a shot is actually a little bit harder now than it ever has been before, because flare happens when light enters the lens and basically bounces around in the glass in there and creates this sort of this hazy effect on your shot. Now, some of the older lenses, which weren't polished and that sort of thing, did that a lot, and it was almost difficult, not to get flare. So at the moment you can see, even though with my modern lens, and it's not an expensive lens, I'm pointing it straight at the lights and I'm still not getting any flare. So I'm going to try and boost that up by simply adding what is referred to as a diffusion filter on the lens. Diffusion filters are used primarily by landscape people, landscape shooters who are taking shots of a landscape and there's quite a lot of contrast. Maybe it's a brighter day and there's a tree half a mile away that's got a lot of shadow in there, and obviously they can't run over there and just add a bit of extra light. So what they do is they pop on a diffusion filter that might just raise or just lower the contrast even of those blacks. So it's just got them a bit more detail. In this instance, I'm going to use it with a portrait, and what's going to happen is the light's going to enter this filter and it's going to scatter as it enters before it goes into the actual camera itself. So let's pop that on. Just screw it on the front there and let's just take a shot. Again, I haven't changed anything. Nothing's changed. The lights are exactly the same power and setup. Nothing's changed apart from me adding this filter. So let's see what we got now. Okay. So we're getting a little bit coming in there, okay? So, which is fine, but I want a lot more than that really. So we can micromanage that a little bit. What we can do is we can bring those lights even closer together behind the model, so they're pointing straight into the camera. I'm getting the blue, but I want a bit more orange back there. So I'm just going to bring those lights closer in. With a lot of these portraits and headshots, you're probably going to be using a slightly longer lens anyway, around the 60 to 85 range. So your actual shot, is quite tight in here. So you can bring these really close behind the model and they're still not going to be in shot. Again, make sure it's just pointing past the model. It's almost like you're angling this straight down the barrel of your lens now. Okay. And Smiler, are these looking about the same distance apart there from you? Yeah, looking good? Okay. Let's make sure this is pointing past you. Yep. Okay. Another thing to increase the flare in your shot is obviously to just increase the power a little bit, okay? Now, I know I said we don't want to blow out those highlights, but we're not going to. Remember, we're using the diffusion filter now as well. So that's going to soften those highlights again. So I'm just going to put an extra half stop on each of these. Okay, let's take another shot, see what we get now. Boom, love it. That's excellent. Okay, spot on. So we've got a lot of color now in the top corners, okay? So we filled in those dark edges. We've got a lot more engaging interest in there, and it's a lovely color wash right across there from the blue to the orange, okay? We've still got all our detail in the highlights. We haven't blown out the highlights because remember the diffusion filter is helping there as well, okay? So we've got a fantastic shot as is. You know, we've managed to take complete control of what's going on in the top half of our image. You know, we've got rid of some of that blank space, that dark area. We've got that color added back in there. But I want to really take complete control of my viewer's eyes, really, and bring all the attention into Smiler's eyes in the shot, okay? So I want to sort of bring the attention up from the bottom of the image. There's not much going on down there. If we had maybe a different outfit, there was a lot of interest down there, then fair enough, but I really want to take complete control, okay? If something's not adding to an image, you have to be careful that it might be actually taking away from an image. So really guiding your viewer's eye is going to be crucial, and we'll do that in the next step now. So to take complete control of our viewer's eye and where it's going, I'm going to be blurring out the bottom of the image. I'm not going to be doing that in post, I'm going to be doing that in camera. So this is the Lensbaby Composer Pro. This is the 50mm version. And this one I use for all the blurring in my shots. And it's like a tilt shift lens in that it splits in half and tilts, but rather than a tilt shift as a slice, this has got like a circle, like a radial blur. Okay, so we're going to pop that on. So with this lens, when you're shooting with it and that sort of thing and you're bringing it up to your eye, it's probably best to have a good idea of the angle before you bring it up to your face, okay? So as a good rule of thumb, I know that I'm going to be cropping in here sort of about head height, and I want obviously Smiler's face to be in focus. So I'm just going to angle up like that slightly, okay? So I know that the area of focus is going to be in the sort of the top third, okay? So let's have a look. At the moment, I don't have any diffusion on this lens, so I haven't got the diffusion filter on. Cool, looking good. Okay, and you can see already that we're blurring out the necklace there, and we're creating some of that blur that's really taking all the attention straight to straight to Smiler's eyes. Okay, just gonna take a few more shots like that, just so I can get an idea of the focus point exactly. Perfect. Okay, and now I'm just going to hold this in front. And see, we should now have the blurring and we should now have the flaring as well. Perfect. Brilliant. Excellent. Good job. So I'm happy with the focusing and the way that's looking, but I'm just going to bring back in the diffusion filter. Okay, we have the diffusion filter on the other lens, and I just want to bring that flare back in. But this one is a screw fit, but I don't have one that screws onto this aperture, so I'm just going to hold it in front and focus with my feet. Cool, brilliant, love it. So we're ready to start shooting now. I've got everything set up, colored flare behind, we've got the beauty dish with this fill light here, we've got the Lensbaby on, we've got the flare, ready to start shooting, and finally Smiler can start getting some poses on the go. And I'm also going to bring in a fan, so we're going to get one of our assistants over here just to bring in the fan, just to add a little bit more volume to the hair, and it'll really help with the flare as well, okay? That's good. So let's start off with a few shots with the hands down a second. That's it. That's good. So you may notice me actually just bringing this further away from the lens, just pulling the diffusion filter back from the lens. That's just so I can focus. This is a manual focus lens. So yeah, I'm having to focus, then I'm just bringing it right back over the front. So I'm getting that flare straight back in there. That's good. That's nice. Beautiful, yeah. Okay, and now bring just one of the hands up into the hair there. That's it, lovely. Okay. And maybe just turn your left shoulder to me a bit more. That's nice, yeah, that's good. Okay. Put your left hand on your hip a little bit, bring it up like that. That's good, yeah. And then your right hand back up into the hair. Beautiful. Just re-get the focus, 2 seconds. It's nice, it's great. Okay. And then maybe sort of bringing your head forward like this so your hair falls down on this side. So that's it. That's it, perfect. Yeah, that's good. That's nice. Okay, just let me adjust the focus. Good. Okay. Love it, good job. It's nice. Some of those. So looking at some of these shots here, we're actually using a 50mm lens, which is the Lens Baby. Earlier on when we were setting everything up, we were probably a lot closer to the sort of 60, 70, 85mm on that zoom lens. So you can see that because we've gone a little bit wider, we're actually starting to see these gelled lights in the shot. I'm fine with that. I don't think it's distracting at all. It's just worth bearing in mind that that's what's happening here. Okay. Okay, so just come a tiny bit this way. That's it. Yeah, because the way your head's coming back is cool. It's good. That's cool. Come back this way. That's it. So I want you in the middle of the lights. Perfect. That's it. It's good. Okay, that's good. And just breathe through the mouth so the lips are slightly open a little bit. That's lovely. Perfect. That's good. That's cool. The reason why it's taking so long, it's not you. You're doing great. It's because I'm having to manually change all this. I don't want you thinking, oh, I'm doing something wrong or anything. It's all good. Okay. Nice, okay. And come square on to me, just square on, as in straight on to me. That's it. It's nice, it's good.
Hello.
That's right. That's good. And just bring your right hand up into the shot, just onto your shoulder like this. It's coming in.
Like this?
Yeah, that's good. Good, perfect. Lovely. Just bring it chin up slightly, chin up. It's nice. Just angle the head over a little bit on this side. Beautiful, perfect. These are nice. Nice, okay, cool, good. So I'm really happy with what we've got here. We've got loads to choose from, and I can't wait to start editing those. But before we just wrap up here, let's just go over a couple of the objectives that we set out to do right at the start. And they were to create some of that separation of light. You know, we spoke about that with either the lights behind, separating our model from our background. We spoke about, obviously, the importance of getting your white lights right first, okay? So getting this exposed, you know, our objective light with our beauty dish, getting symmetry in there. And then we just added in some light into those shadows that we had. You know, sometimes later on when I'm in post, I like to, you know, crank up the contrast. I want to have as much information in my shadows as possible. And of course with the hair lights, like I said, the placement, make sure we're not pointing them directly at the model. You know, we don't want to blow out any of those, you know, the hair with any of the highlights, so just pointing them slightly past the model. Again, thinking about having them above the model's eye level, you know, even though they're behind, we want to get color all the way around. And then adding the color, so a little bit of color theory in there with using complementary colors, okay? Colors that are opposite one another on the color wheel, and being mindful of colors, you know, what not to use. And then obviously bringing in some of the more creative elements with the diffusion filter, adding in some of that flare just to add a lot more color into the shot, especially up there in the top left and right hand corners. And then finally adding in our Lens Baby to create that blurring at the bottom to take complete control of our viewer's eyes, okay? So it just, you know, as soon as this image comes up, all our eyes, attention is going straight to Smiler's eyes there. We've got loads of great shots here. These are all ready to get straight into the editing process. So let's get cracking with the next shoot. Okay, so here we've got our first gelled flare shot. Now you may notice that I've just jumped straight into Photoshop here, and although I did bring this through a Lightroom,
reason why I didn't go through that is because the way that we set this shot up was very linear, in that it was, you know, quite a strong teaching exercise, with, you know, each step being pretty much the same, and the resulting shots were all pretty much the same, so it wasn't much of an editing process to go through in Lightroom. But don't worry, we'll definitely go through a lot of Lightroom work on the other shots, but I just wanted to jump straight into Photoshop with this one, because the retouch on this one is what I would refer to as a portrait edit. So we're going to be going over other videos that go over sort of beauty retouching as well as more of an editorial retouch, but this particular shot is what I would call a portrait retouch, which is a slightly quicker way of retouching, and it's probably you know, something that I would do for an actual client as well. This is the way that I would do it. You know, portrait retouch, you're trying to retain some more of the natural details and characteristics. You're not taking out elements. You're not liquefying as much, that sort of thing. So this would be more of a you know, like a friend or family member, and you know, that sort of portrait retouching. So keeping it clean but still looking good. So let's jump in with this one, and what I would always do with any retouching is this is obviously the base layer. This is, you know, pretty much the raw file from Lightroom. What I would do is I would just duplicate that. So Command J just to duplicate. So we've always got our base layer. You know, it's always nice as well at the end, whenever you've retouched, to go back and look at where you came from. Sometimes you'll get to the end, and because you've done so many minor moves all the way up there, you haven't noticed something blaringly obvious, and sometimes it's nice to have that so that you can go, have I changed it too much from the original? So we've got our fresh layer here, so let's just get cracking on actually doing the basic retouching. So what I mean by that is like the skin retouching, so just getting rid of spots and smaller elements like that sort of thing. Okay. Now for all of my skin retouching, I actually use this is the patch tool. Okay, so over here we've got our patch tools, and there's, you know, obviously you've got a spot healing brush and you've got the regular healing brush, and the patch tool. I use this regular patch tool for all of my skin retouching. The reason being for that is that I like to have the ability to change the shape of the items that I'm trying to remove and that sort of thing. The spot healing brush is always going to be in that circle, and it's always going to, sometimes I find it can give me more of a, should we say, like a similar look. You've got spots and you're just replacing it with other larger spots and that sort of thing. Sometimes it can look a bit false. So with this, the patch is a different shape and size each and every time, and I can manually select which area I'm copying. So that's just it. Personal preference. I know most people just tend to use this spot healing brush. It's good enough for what they want, so that's absolutely fine. But yeah, like I said, coming in, I'm just really looking to remove anything that's spots and that sort of thing. I'm not going to take out mold or anything in this portrait edit. I'm going to leave that sort of thing, and just clean it up. Don't want anything to stand out or catch the eye. That's really why we are taking away spots and that sort of thing. It's just distracting from the overall image afterwards. Let me just come in here and just pop out these eye bags as well. Not that they really are eye bags, but I mean, just soften them up. This is, I could come in and try and patch that, but I'm probably going to do that in a later stage with more of a tone retouch, because there's no one piece there that I could replicate it with, or choose something nearby that I could use. So I just want to actually just lighten it rather than replace it. I don't want to make it look too false. So that'll make more sense later on. Okay. So as some of you may have spotted, it's looking a little bit soft. This shot, this was taken on the Lens Baby, if you recall, which is a lens that is almost like a tilt shift lens, but without the shifting part. Okay. Now this here is a mole. Now I said that I'm not going to be removing moles, but when you look at an image like this, you're not sure what that is. Now I know it's a mole, but somebody else would be like, is that just a mark on the camera or whatever, because it's been blurred by the Lens Baby. So even though I said I wouldn't do this, I am going to, because I feel that it's distracting. Okay. What other things we're looking for in this are going to be dust on the sensor. Here we go. They obviously need to be taken out. Or you just get your sensor cleaned. That would make a lot more sense. To be fair, my sensor was so filthy at one point that was the whole reason why I started shooting wide open on certain shoots. So around f2.8, that sort of f4, that sort of thing, because it meant that the sensor wasn't picking up the dust spots in the actual shot. If you're shooting at f16, then when you take a shot, just all the dust on the sensor shows up. So down here what we've got is, this is because I've actually tilted the lens baby so much, I think what we're actually starting to see is the elements of the actual lens itself, or if not, then it's certainly the light catching the edge of the elements itself. So I'm just going to buzz those out. We don't need those in the shot. The patch tool as well is just a one-stop shop for me. I just put that on and I can do pretty much everything. If it wasn't, I'd need to be swapping and changing from the brush to this, back to the brush, and that sort of thing. Whereas for me, it just does everything. You'll notice when I am doing things on the edges here, or patching on the edges, I'm always trying to keep. So rather than going out there, I'm trying to keep it at an edge. Photoshop just finds it easier to replicate it or fix it if you're following the edge, as it were. So what else have we got? The other thing, let's see. The other thing that has put me off is I've actually got these hotspots here from the actual lights themselves. Now, when I originally set this shot up, I think I was shooting at a slightly longer lens, at around, I don't know, 60, 70, something like that. But when and with that longer lens, I wasn't actually seeing these lights because of the compression. But as soon as I swapped to the lens baby, the 50mm, it just meant that the slightly wider lens, I'm starting to see these hotspots. But I do think that they're probably a bit distracting in this image, so I'm just going to reduce them on this layer as well. So how's best to do that? Let's just come in here, let's just see what it looks like if we just use the, yeah, that works, just using the grad to soften it a little bit. I can't take them away entirely, otherwise it'll just look a bit weird, but it'll certainly soften it. That's probably enough, to be fair. Okay, we just go back. Yeah, that's definitely a lot better. Okay, I was saying that. Let's see if we can get away with any more. Let's have a look. Let's just come in there. The reason why it's distracting is because it's human nature for our eyes to go to the brightest part of any image. It's just the way that our eyes or our brains interpret information from our eyes. It's just the way that it works. Now, this one is going to be a bit. This is a monster. Let's have a look. Let's see if we just do the same thing. Just build the grad out. Can I get away with it? Now I might have to undo all of this, or at the very least use that layer that I've got there to save me in a minute. But one alternative here would be to just get a big soft brush and put it in there. I really try and avoid using the brush, as in the paintbrush, at any stage of the editing process. Some people can get away with it, I suppose, but the thing is, a paintbrush doesn't have any inherent grain with it. It's like you're just painting on just raw data, if you like. So it doesn't have the grain or the noise from the actual sensor. So it always stands out to me as being quite fake whenever you paint something. So if I can try and use some of the original noise and data here, then it's, in my opinion, it's going to look a little bit cleaner. If I do use paint, and I know, and you'll see me use paint in some of the editorial backgrounds and that sort of thing. If I do ever use paint, then I try and add noise to it afterwards, just to soften it up, or not soften it up, but just give it a little bit of texture so that it's not as false. So pro tip, just move the light in future. Don't do this. I should have just moved it. For some reason I didn't think about it because it was fine in the on the longer lens, but I just didn't spot it. But I think we'll be fine. Nearly there. Now the whole point of this is to just not be as glaringly obvious as that big spotlight was before. So as long as we've achieved that, then that's fine. Cool, okay. Right. So I'm going to try and just soften that up with a little bit of, not full paint, but just soften it up a little bit. So like, let's just try the opacity at 20% or something like that, and let's have a look. If we just use white in here, let's just have a soft brush. Just to soften up. I'm just dotting here. Okay. Cool. Fine. Okay. Happy with that. So I think, let's just double check. Am I happy with everything we've done here so far? We got rid of all the spots, like I said, so the skin is done. And we got rid of all the dust and that sort of thing. Sorted out the flare and any weird artifacts we've got down here. Cool. Okay. So that's the skin layer done. That's what I would refer to as a skin layer. In fact, let's just name that now so that we can keep track of that later on. So that's just a regular skin. Okay. That's done. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the tone black and white layer. That's what I like to call it. So we've just done our skin. In this next section, what we're going to do is we're going to move into adjusting some of the tone in the skin. So there are some areas that I noticed as I was going through that perhaps was going to be difficult for me to patch out. So like there's some, you can see some almost discoloration and that sort of thing, and especially there's these bags here and that sort of thing. Now what I do up here is like a bit of a shadow and that sort of thing. It would be tricky to patch out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it with like a tone. It's similar to a dodge and burn, but rather than actually burning in areas or enhancing highlights and shadows that are already there, I'm going to be sort of using blacks and whites to try and even out some of the tone of the surface of the skin itself. So it'll make more sense once we get started. But what we want is we want to go to let's have a new layer, and we're going to call this, let's just call it black and white tone layer. Okay, and then that's fine. And we're going to just change this to soft light. okay, in the mode, and then we're just going to fill this with 50% grey. Okay, hit OK. So that's it there. Okay, because it's at soft light, the blending mode of soft light just means that it doesn't show anything that's 50% grey. So that's why you can't see the layer. So we've got that. So that's the layer that we're actually going to be painting on. But at the moment, it's a little bit hard to see what needs to be worked on. So I'm just going to make my life a little bit easier by turning the image black and white, just by adding this hue and saturation layer and removing all the saturation. Now I'm going to be deleting this afterwards, so that's why I've kept it on a separate layer. Okay, and so I've made it black and white, so I've got rid of distracting elements like the color. Now I just want to add a bit more contrast to make it even more obvious of what needs to be changed. Okay, so I'm just going to add a curves layer, and rather than add contrast, I'm just going to be lazy and just turn it to multiply, which just darkens it down. Okay, just close that. Now you should see that, you know, darker elements in the image are a lot more obvious. Okay, and these are the elements that perhaps I want to be. There's even some white patches here that I didn't even see before. So all these are underneath this, as it were, and if we even this out with the same tone, just by painting with black and white paint on this grey layer, it should give the impression of smoother skin. Okay, so we're just going to choose just a regular brush, okay, and we're going to come with like a nice soft brush, and I'm going to have a really low opacity, let's say 10%, and we just want to be painting with black and white, pure black and white, don't use any colours or anything like that, and then we just want to paint directly onto this. Okay, so we're going to soften that eye bag there just by adding white paint. I'm actually going to lower the opacity, you know, down even lower to 6. I just think it's even at 10% still quite aggressive. Okay, I'm just going to soften it in here just a touch. I don't want to take away the shape of her face or anything, so just be careful not to overdo it, but just add a little bit in there. And there's a slightly darker spot in there as well. Just going to lighten that. Okay, now this area here I know is sculpting of the cheekbone and the jawline and that sort of thing, so I know I don't need to affect that. Okay, and in fact later on I'll actually be darkening that down in the true dodge and burn layer. So there's no point in me lightening it now. So down here I would say this is a darker patch that perhaps we don't need. Doesn't take much, literally, you know, I'm on 6% flow here, or opacity of paint. So it doesn't take much at all. Because remember, these have been exaggerated with these with the curves layer and the hue and saturation layer. So I'm just evening out these transitions just a touch as well. That's something that I was going to do. And here I would feel that it's like a little white mark there. I'm just going to switch it to the black, okay? And then I am just going to just come in here just a tiny bit and just even it out. It might not seem like much, but if you do this all over, then all these things add up. And like I said, this is not a particularly advanced retouch on this one, because for a start it's a portrait retouch, but secondly it's relatively soft, you know, because of the lens that we were using. I thought I had black paint on. Try that again. Yeah, so it's relatively soft because of the lens that we're using. So we don't actually. It's not a huge amount of information to even work with to begin with. Like freelance retouchers, you know, must hate, you know, the medium format files that they get, digital files with, you know, 60 megapixels and upwards of data. You know, we're literally retouching at the pore level. It's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be so difficult, you know, to not make it look bad, if you like. And again, I'm just being fussy in there, but I think that's all good. don't think we need to do too much more. This shadow in here, just spotted. Let's just come back and just lighten that just slightly. Okay, let's turn that off and on. Here we go. Okay. So it doesn't seem like much. Okay. And in fact, if we just turn everything off and just look at that layer, yeah, there you go. So you can see what's actually on that layer. Okay. Okay, so I am happy with that. So let's delete these. We're done with those now. Okay. We've got our black and white layer. You see in there, you didn't need to retouch that eye bag. We could just do it with just lightening it. Okay. Cool. Okay, so that's the overall tone. That's that completed. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be the skin smoothing. Okay, so we've just finished up doing the tone layer with the skin, so just, you know, great way of dodging and burning, you know, eye bags and bits and pieces like that. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to tighten all that up now with what I would refer to as a skin smoothing layer. You know, I hate using a term smooth alongside skin. You know, you don't want to make it look cheesy, but, you know, will all make sense in a minute, because what we've done is we've done all the retouching elements and we just want to tighten it up now just by blending them nicely. Okay, so let's get started with that, and it'll make more sense once we've done it. But so at the moment we've got everything here. All I want to do is I want to duplicate everything beneath this, so I'm just going to go Command Alt Shift and E, okay, which is just going to create a stamp visible of everything. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to blur this skin, okay, and I want to get a feeling for how much I need to blur it in a minute, but I'm just going to do a test blur at the second. Basically what needs to happen is I want to blur the skin to the point where I can't really see any details at all. Okay, so let's see, maybe something like 30 isn't a bad place to go. I will just point out that this technique requires you to have a blur rate that is divisible by 3. So if we went for 30, then that's fine, because we can divide that by 10. So let's have a look. So for example, another one would be what, 21. So 7. Let's have a look. I'm going to go with 30. I think it's not blurred enough. Okay. Right. So I've got that number now. I'm not going to apply that just yet. I'm just going to exit out of there. Okay. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to come down to, so filter down into other, into high pass. Okay. And I'm going to apply that number in here. So that 30 number that we had a moment ago. Okay. I'm going to apply it in here. So that seems a bit counterintuitive at the moment, I know, seeing as people use high pass for sharpening, and I said I was going to be smoothing, but bear with me. So I'm going to OK that. Okay, now I'm going to come back to my Gaussian blur. Remember I said that R30 needed to be divisible by 3, so I'm going to input my 10 figure. Okay, so I'm now going to blur that by 10, which is the third of the 30 that we used on the high pass. I'm going to OK that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert that image, so Command I, okay, so that just inverts the image, and then I'm just going to come down here on the blending mode down to linear light, okay. Now that looks pretty terrifying at the moment, but what we do have is we do have our smooth sections of skin in here, which is what I was after, okay. What all we need to do now is just mask those out. So let's just come down here. This is the mask button down here. If you just hold down, I think it's Alt, and click on that, it just gives you a black mask which covers everything. Okay. So we just need to reveal the elements that, you know, the areas that we need. So let's come back to our brush tool and let's select the white, okay, pure white, big soft brush again, and this time we're going to go in at 100%, okay, because I want to get everything that I've just done in there. Now I'm going to be pretty liberal with this to begin with, and I'll fix it or tidy it up in a minute with some black paint, but this is just the way that I do it. Now, to be fair, the elements down here are already pretty blurred anyway, so we don't need to do too much down there. We're really just concentrating on the face. So let's make sure the whole face is covered. Cool. Okay, now I'm going to switch to my black paint, and I'm just going to paint back on here, but I'm going to bring back the obvious elements like lips, nose, that sort of thing. So I'm sure a lot of you will probably use the technique frequency separation, okay, and this is similar to that, but to be fair, frequency separation is a lot of work. And you know, I'm fine with a lot of work, but again, I have a little bit of a concern with the fact that a lot of frequency separation techniques just use paint. So you select an area with the eyedropper and that sort of thing, choose an area, and then you paint on top with a chosen color. Now again, that's using what I said I wasn't keen on, was using actual paint rather than pixels. Okay, so yes, you are retaining the texture on top. You know, the technique, you use two layers, as it were, one with the texture and one without, but still you're still using you know, the broad strokes of actual paint. You're choosing the color, as it were, whereas this technique is actually using the skin, okay, and it's using, granted, a blurred version of it, but it's still using the actual details from the skin underneath. So I just prefer it. It seems to work for me. You know, it works a lot with the gelled images that I do as well, with colors, quite nicely. And to be fair, it's certainly a damn sight quicker than using frequency separation. That's a lot of hard work. So let's just double check what we got. So that's with it off and on. Let's just, got to be careful. Obviously, yeah, see we're losing that highlight there, so I've just brought back that highlight. Okay. And just coming in there, make sure we got the eyes. But you can see, okay, smoothed out those layers. Alright. Smooth them out nicely. Now another thing is, you may think, oh, that's quite blurred, but I'm doing this knowing that I'm going to be sharpening it later on, and you can get away with doing it like that. Again, this is just a different technique. If you're happy doing the frequency separation, then carry on doing that. This is just the way that I do it. Cool. Okay. So I'll just check down here that we haven't missed anything, haven't blurred the necklace or anything. Looks all looking good. I'm just going to bring that hair back a touch in there. Okay, now we've still got the ability to change the opacity of this now. So if you think, well, that is, you know, that's looking a bit too fake for me. So yeah, you know, bring it down to, what should we say? Bring it down to like something like 70, something like that. 70 or 80, and that retains some more of the, you know, the reality underneath, if you like. Okay, but you can come down as much as you want. You know, I know on some shots and that sort of thing come down as low as 50 and 30. Okay, but let's go with 70% on this one, and let's just rename that so that we can keep track of that later on. Let's call it Skin Smooth. Brilliant. Okay, so that's the skin smoothing done. What we're going to do is we are going to move on to the dodge and burning now. Okay, so we're going to do that in the next section. I'm just going to go over some overall dodging and burning. Okay, so we just wrapped up with the skin smoothing, and now what we're going to do is move straight into the dodging and burning. Okay, and this is going to be larger, sort of global dodging and burning. And this is the technique that there's loads of ways of doing this, but this is just a technique that I use. So let's get started with that then. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to create a curves layer. So just going to hit curves. Okay, if you're not sure, if you don't have that palette there or anything like that, and you can always get them in here, you just add them in the windows. Okay, new, I think it's new adjustment layer, curves. Okay. So this is going to be, let's rename that now so we can keep track of it. This is going to be our burn layer. So this is going to be the elements that we are going to make darker. Okay, and let's drag that down. Just in the middle there, drag it down to about there. Okay. Now we want to hide this at the moment. We don't want the whole image to be dark, so we're going to hide this. It already gives you a mask when you bring it in, so all you have to do is click on the mask there so that it's highlighted and hit Command I to invert it. Okay, and then that's hidden that. Okay, next what we're going to do is we are going to add another layer. This one is going to be our dodge layer, so we're just going to brighten that up. Okay, and again, click on the mask, hide it, and then we're going to call that dodge. Okay, so let's click back onto our burn layer. So we want to basically enhance, or yeah, enhance, I suppose. We don't want to exaggerate or anything like that. We still want to keep it believable, but we just want to go over elements and just make sure that the darker areas are, you know, nice and dark, and the brighter areas are nice and bright, just to give it that extra depth, that extra dimension. Okay, so we're going to do this simply by choosing a soft brush again. Okay, and then we're going to paint with white onto our burn mask. And super low opacity again, sort of anywhere between 5 and 10%. Okay, I'm going to go in there at 6% just to give me. And then, like I said before, we're going to come in here. We're just going to darken, almost applying makeup really. And that's essentially what we're doing. So we're just coming in and just going over almost what the makeup artist would have already done. Okay, and the benefit is that we did have a makeup artist on this shoot, so there's certainly going to be a lot less needing doing. So just coming in here, following the darker areas. Okay, and then come out here as well, darken in there, just to give some shape to the hair. Okay, make sure there's a nice shadow underneath the jaw there, underneath the chin, so it makes the chin stand out. Okay. And again, just adding it in there as well. Okay, so that's most of the large areas of burning done. I'm going to zoom in now and just look at some areas that maybe we can just add a bit more darkness to the eyebrows here, just to make them a bit more prominent. Okay, and then just come in on this side of the nose just to give it a bit more structure down there. And then we're really going to come in and copy the makeup now, just coming in over the tops of the eyes. And then the eyeshadow area just coming in up here. And again on this side. Okay, and then we're just going to just accentuate the lips, so adding the shadow to the bottom and the top there. Okay, I'm just going to give them more shape. But really all I'm doing is I'm just following the shadows that are already there. You know, I'm not making anything up. Now there's 1,000,001 techniques out there to retouch eyes and dodge and burning eyes, but for me, I just keep it pretty simple. I just darken the outer area just a touch, make sure it's nice and dark underneath there. Don't want to do it too much. I've seen some horrendous retouching of eyes. Okay, just darken underneath there. But yeah, just make sure you don't overdo it. Let's just turn that off and on. I think it's looking, I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think we need to do any more than that. The trick's not to get carried away. Okay, let's just leave that for a second anyway. You can always come back and double check. Let's move on to the dodge layer. So just select in here onto that mask. Okay, and in this area, in this layer, what we want to do is we just want to lighten the areas that perhaps need a little bit of enhancement. So the highlights, really, just looking at the image and looking at where's the highlights, where can we encourage that. So obviously the hair is a good place, just to give it a bit more shine. Okay, and down the arms here as well. And just give this whole necklace actually a little bit of a brighten. Right, now let's zoom in again and let's work on something a little bit closer. So we've got a bit of a highlight here. Okay, so I'm just gonna just lightly just touch on there just to brighten that. Okay, now cheekbones, I want to come in there, okay, and just give those a little bit of a brighten, not too much. Can overdo it, which I think I might have done already. But so let's just brighten the bridge of the nose there. The chin as well, just come in there, and then the lips. Okay, so you can see that highlight that's there. Okay, and there'll be one on the other side as well. Tops of the eyelid in there, that's always a nice one to pick out. Okay, and then the bottom there as well. Now conversely, earlier on we went around the outside with the darken, with the burn. I'm just going to come around just a little bit on the inside with the dodge. Again, not too much. And I don't need to worry too much about down here because I'm happy with it just remaining a bit flatter and darker down here because there's nothing, there's no interest down there, so I don't want to enhance anything. It's just gonna fight with the rest of the image. So let me just turn that off and on a second. Okay, yeah, looking good, and the dark burning. Okay. Now, this might be different for you, but for me, I am notorious for sort of maybe getting a bit carried away with dodging and burning. So I sort of force myself afterwards to just reduce the opacity of these layers. So again, 70 or 80 is probably going to be a good, just to bring it back a little bit. Okay. So I brought the burn down to 70 and the dodge back down to 80. Okay. Just to ease it off a little bit. Okay. Now that's it for the straight dodging and burning with lights and darks, but I am going to move on to using the same technique but with colour, and this is what I would call colour dodge and burn. Okay, so it's the same process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add another curves layer, okay, and this time rather than brightening or darkening it in here, I'm going to click in this RGB one here, okay, and I want to enhance some of the blues that are in the image, okay. Now I do that through this dodge and burn technique rather than, an adjustment slider or hue and saturation or that sort of thing. I manually sort of paint in the added color if I need it. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to choose the red channel here, and obviously if we add red or if we take away red, it just adds cyan. So I'm just going to add a little bit of cyan in this layer. Okay, and then I'm going to come down here to the blue, and I'm going to push up on the blue to add blue. Sometimes you can get away with, I think if you go with the green, not that I have a problem with the colour, it just gets too bright. So let's just leave that. Okay, so that's fine, that's that one. Let's turn that off, as in Command I on the mask there to hide it. Okay, let's name that blue. and let's paint on there now. Okay, so soft brush again, and wherever I paint now is going to be, let's just put it 100% so you can see what I mean. Okay, wherever I paint now is going to be blue. Okay, but let's bring it down to 10% and let's just enhance some of these blue areas in here. Okay. Because of the flare is so heavy, you can't really be too accurate with it. It would be pointless. So that's just adding a little bit more saturation up there. That's cool. Okay, that's good. Don't need to do any more than that. And now we're going to flip over and we're going to do the orange on this side. So again, new curves adjustment layer. Come in here, drop down, pump up the reds. Okay, because we want to add some red in there. And come down with the blue. And then take away. So basically this is the opposite to what we've just done on the blue layer. And then we're going to add some yellows in there. Okay, it's looking good. Hide that. Command I on the mask. And let's rename that orange. Click on the mask, and then again, exactly the same thing, just with the brush. Come and paint back in here. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more, so I've just added some more opacity to that, so just raised it to 20%, so we can get a bit more of an effect. Just come in here. Cool, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm now just going to group all of these into, so I'm just going to click on the top one there, the orange, hold down shift and click on burn, and then I'm going to hit Command G to pop them in a group, and then I'm just going to call this dodge and burn. Cool, okay, and now all my dodging and burning and colors are in that one group. Okay, so that's it for dodging and burning. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to move into just overall darkening and sharpening. Okay, so we just finished up on the dodging and burning. What we're going to move into now is the sort of the more global elements of the adjustments. So think of it as, you know, whenever you're retouching, is right at the start you're working on the tiny elements. So you're removing tiny spots, you're, you know, removing tiny hairs, that sort of thing. And then the further down the retouch process, the more, you know, the larger the changes that you're making, or like, you know, the more global the changes that you're making. Okay, so you know, we did the skin, we did, you know, which is obviously, you know, small elements. Then the tones, which are, again, you know, smaller elements. We did the and we did dodging and burning, which slightly larger. And now we're getting into, you know, more of the global adjustments. And this next bit is down to your personal retouching style, but for me, I always tend to have brighter images because I've shot them slightly brighter. I think when I was discussing, you know, when I was shooting this image, I was saying that I use a fill light, and I have a fill light that's slightly brighter, and you know, the images that I kick out of Lightroom tend to be a little bit flatter, almost brighter. So at some point I need to darken down the image just to combat that, or, you know, and I usually do it here. This is when I do it, and it's, you know, it's not complicated, but it is just something that I'm just going to mention that I'm going to do. You might not need to because of the way that you shoot and the way that you retouch. It's just something that I can't seem to get out of that habit, or I like having as much detail in the image for as long as possible. But this is where I just darken it down just to tighten it up. Okay, there we go. Not much, very simple, but yeah, that's when I do it. So next what we're going to move into is the sharpening. Okay, and again, this is one of those sections or part of a retouch where there's a million and one ways of doing it, but I'm just going to go through the ways that I do it. Okay. So first off, I want to create a new stamp visible layer. So Command Alt Shift and E. Okay, so that's everything on top of there. So that's just a copy of absolutely everything. Okay, and then I want to have 2 copies of this. So I'm just going to hit Command J on that to duplicate it. Okay, it makes sense in a minute, but I'm going to turn that one off for a second. So this is the first layer of sharpening that I'm going to do, and this is going to be the super fine sharpening. All right, so this is going to be let's rename that Sharpen Fine. Okay. Now, when you're sharpening an image, you just want to be sharpening the edge details, if you like. Sharpening, the way that it works is it just Photoshop increases the contrast of adjacent pixels. Okay, that's how sharpening works. So we all know that maximum contrast is black and you have white next to it. Okay, essentially that's what's going on. But when that happens with color, is it adds saturation when you add contrast. So when I'm sharpening this, I don't want to affect the color. So I'm just going to strip the color out of this. Okay, so I am going to come in here to. Normally I do this via a shortcut, but I just wanted to show you how I would do it normally. Image adjustments. It's been so long since I've done it like this. Here we go. So in there, and just reduce the saturation minus 100, and just OK that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into Filter, Other, High Pass. Okay, and this is the fine sharpening. Okay, so we want to come way down here. Okay, let's have a look and zoom in so we can see what's going on with the eyes and stuff. That's obviously our key element. So for this, anywhere from like 3 to 8% is a good place to start. I'm going to go with 4 in here for this one. I'm just starting to see some of the pores and stuff come back in the skin there. So let's hit OK on that. Now we're going to come down here and we're going to change the blend mode, the layer blend mode. Okay, and there's a couple of ways that you can go with this. Overlay, hard light. They're probably the 2 that I would look at. Vivid light is probably a bit strong. I would stick with maybe hard light for me. Okay, now you can start to see that we've got some of that skin texture back that we were like, oh, we've lost that before on the skin blurring. We're starting to get that back now. Okay, so I'm aware that that happens later on. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that a hard light. Okay, now we can now play with the opacity. Let's just zoom out a bit here. I don't actually think we need to reduce it too much, to be honest. The reason being is if this was a pin sharp image at f16, that would be so over sharpened it would look ridiculous. You probably need to drop it down to 10 or 15%. Because of the nature of this image, we can get away with a lot higher. So let's just bring it. Let's just soften it off a touch. Okay, cool. So that's that layer done. Let's just leave that. Happy with that. Next, we're going to move on to our new layer here, and this is going to be more of a broad sharpen. Okay, but it's going to be, like I said, sharpening is done with contrast, but this is going to be of larger areas. So this is almost like a poor man's dodge and burn, but it's a nice way of tightening up an image later on, like we're doing here. Okay, when I say a poor man's dodge and burn, is when I was working in a commercial high turnover studio, this is the technique that we would use to actually dodge and burn rather than manually do it, because it just took too long. Command Shift and U, it's just going to desaturate it completely like we did before. Come in here, Filter, Other, High Pass, and then I'm going to bring it up hugely. Okay, so you can start to see what I meant about the the dodging and burning sort of effect. Okay, so the highlights are still there. You've got the bridge of the nose and the eyes and that sort of thing. Okay, let's hit OK on that. Now we're going to come down, and you probably want to look at something like soft light is a way to go. So let me just turn that off and on so you can see what's going on. So that enhances the tonal definition. Okay, it's almost like a global dodge and burn, like I said. Okay, but we're going to ease off on that. Probably let's bring it back to 50% there. Yeah, it's looking fine. It's looking good. Yeah. Okay. Happy with that. Nice. Okay. So let's make that. Let's rename that so we can keep track of that. Let's go broad sharpen. Cool. Okay. Let's pop that in a group just to keep things nice and clean and tidy. Because I'm renowned for being clean and tidy. I'm only renaming these for you guys. So that's that. That's in the sharpen one. Perfect. Cool. Okay, so that's sharpening, guys. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to look at global highlights. Okay, so we just wrapped up on the sharpening. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on the global highlights. Okay, so this is something that works really well with some of the colored gel images that I do, where I'm using maybe the skin's quite oily and it's quite shiny and that sort of thing. It's not going to be as prominent on this particular shot, but it's worth showing you anyway. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to have we want a brand new stamp visible there, so Command Alt Shift and E. Okay, so again, just a copy on top there. All right, now I want to just brighten this image, so I'm just going to do it the lazy way and just hit screen on that. So just brightens it up. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click over here on this empty part of a layer to bring up the layer style. Now what we want to be doing is we want to be hiding the parts of this image apart from the highlights. So all we want to see is the brightest parts of the image, and we're going to do that with the blend if sliders down here. Okay, so we've got our sliders here. What we want to do is we want to hold down Alt and click on that arrow and it will split. If you don't hold down Alt, it just moves the whole thing. We just want to split that. Okay, we want to split it, and we're going to drag it all the way across. Then going to release the Alt and come back here and grab this one and bring it all the way back down here as well. Now I'm just going to, you look at the cheekbones and forehead up here as I bring this up. Okay, you start to see those highlights coming back. The beauty of that is that it's still got the pore detail and the definition from the sharpening and all that sort of thing still there. Okay, so it's a really nice way of giving your images that extra finish or pop in the end, in my opinion. Okay, so you don't want to go too far, because otherwise if it goes too far then you lose all the definition. It's just made the whole face white. We just want the highlights. Okay, so something like that should be good. Hit OK, and then again just knock this back. Okay, I've just knocked it down to 30%. Just added a nice little pop there of brightness. Okay, nice, excellent. Okay, let's rename that. What should we call that? Let's call that global highlights. Perfect. Okay, so that's it for the global highlights, guys. Next, what we're going to move on to is the final stage, which is going to be the color toning. Okay, so we just wrapped up the global highlights, and last but not least is going to be the color toning section. And I always leave the color toning right to the very end. And the reason for that is because it will tighten up the whole image. Okay, so you may go, well, you could do all your colors in Lightroom and, so on and so forth. Of course, yeah, you can do, and I do a lot of color toning in Lightroom before I bring it into Photoshop. But I also always do color toning afterwards to tighten up the image. What I mean by that is that there's dodging and burning that's gone on. There may well be, the color dodging and burning and that sort of thing. All these things will, add other colors and elements and tones into the shot. Okay, and this global color toning right at the end will just, in my opinion, help to tighten it all up. Okay, so let's get started. And the way that I do my color toning is with the curves adjustment layers, but I do it with the red, green and blue channels. I'll just show you. So I'm just going to add one there, and obviously we've got the red, green and blue. When I first started doing the color toning, I used to do it all in one channel. So I'd go in, adjust the red, adjust the green, adjust the blue, and it would all be, all my color toning would all be done in one curves layer. But I found that it was difficult to work out sometimes what was going on with the color. Sometimes the color tone wasn't looking good, and I was trying to work out why and that sort of thing. So now I just do a different curve for each of the 3 channels. Okay, so I'm going to make this my blue channel. So I'm just going to rename that blue. I'm going to add another curves for my greens, and then one more for the red. Okay, so let's pop those in a folder as well. So hit Shift at the bottom there and Command G to pop them in a group, and then color tone with a U. Huh, who knew? And then what we're going to do is start off down here with my blue channel. Okay, you start whichever one you want. I just start with the blue one, always have done, so that's the way I'm going to do it. So the blue's here. So let's just have a look. What can we do with our color toning in here? Well, first off, this is our curve, but we're just affecting the blues now. Okay, and if we bring the curve up, it's going to add blue. Bring the curve down, it's going to add yellow. Okay, and up here, this is affecting the brighter areas of an image. Okay, so if we bring the curve up here, we're going to be affecting the highlights. We're going to be adding blue to the highlights. If we bring our curve up down here, we're going to be affecting the shadows more. Okay, now it's a curve, so it's bringing everything up, but if you add another point, you can stop that. Okay, so now we're sort of pretty much only affecting the blues in the shadows. Okay, so you can see, this part of the image is not really being affected. Okay, conversely, if we do it up here, you can see that we're affecting the highlights here especially, I see, and we're only affecting the blues and yellows in the highlights. So when you're starting out getting used to color toning and that sort of thing, especially using curves, this is how I do it. I just add a point in the middle, and then down in the shadows here, and then in the highlights. It just means that I'm not making huge adjustments to the whole image. I'm just, okay, I just want to concentrate on how much blue do I want in my shadows. Okay, well, I just want a little bit of blue in the shadows. Okay, so I'm just going to bring that up a little bit. Now it may be that I do want actually some blues in my highlights as well, which I think I do. I just want to cool off those highlights just a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to bring down the blues on the midtones just a touch. Okay, let's leave that for a second. We can always come back to it, and I strongly recommend that you do come back to it once you've finished. But let's move on to our green. So we're only going to be affecting the green in here. Okay, similar principle, just pop your points in there. And so down here, we bring it up, we're adding green to the shadows, and pull it down, we're adding magenta to the shadows. So I actually just want to add a little bit of warmth to those shadows. Okay, and then again, just make sure those highlights aren't getting muddy. You can see, I mean, it barely looks like I've changed that curve at all, but when you're dealing with color, it makes a huge difference. Okay. And then lastly, let's come up here into the reds, and then just pop them in there. as a rule, well, not as a rule, but as a guide, I would say that it tends to be that the red channel I actually use the least for color toning. I find that I can do everything I want to do in the greens and the blues. So down here, if we add reds, down here we're adding reds to the shadows, or down here we pull it down, we're adding cyan to the shadows. Okay, I'm just gonna warm it up just a touch in there. But not much. Let's have a look what's going on down here. Let's see. Just play with it a little bit, but I don't think there's anything that we need to change there really. Midtones are just looking a touch warm to me. I've been dealing with colour for years, and trust me, this is far easier than when I used to have to do it with colour printing. It was an absolute nightmare. So if you are starting to do it and you go, I can't tell the difference, it looks the same to me, then give your eyes a break, go away, grab a cup of tea, or in fact, if this was a proper commercial shoot for a client, I would obviously colour tone all my images, but I would never ever send them colour toned images before I've given my eyes a break. Usually the next day, come back to it, and 9 times out of 10, I guarantee I will adjust that color toning. Basically, because your eyes adapt, and given enough time, your eyes will make anything look good. It'd be like, yeah, that looks great. You come back the next day, and it's like, what on earth was I thinking? But let's have a look. I might add a touch more blue in there. Maybe bring that. So you see me adjusting this far end point down here. This is adjusting the pure blacks, if you like. Okay, so essentially this area here. So I'm adding blue to that area specifically, almost. Okay, I think it doesn't need to be much. Yeah, I think that's looking good. I'm happy with that. Let's just double check in here. These reds or magentas even. Cool. Nice. Like I said, they're not major adjustments, but what it is doing is it's just tightening everything else up. Like I said, that's the main thing. So it's just bringing in, basically there's going to be areas in here or tones or shadows that are going to be similar, but there may be differences, and what this color tone does, it'll just tighten them up so they're all the same tone. So visually it just makes the image look a lot stronger. Okay, so that is it, guys. We are done. That's that image complete. So let's come back and see where we started. Okay, so this is what we started off with. Okay, this is our almost, pretty much our raw image, straight into Photoshop. Then we just sorted out the skin. Okay, and obviously we did the dust and that sort of stuff, and then we did our tone. So you can see there, like the eye bags and anything like that, with our black and white tone layer. Then we smoothed out our skin, and then we did our global sort of dodging and burning, just darkened down the image, and we did our sharpening. Okay, so sharpened up the whole image. Then we did our global highlights, and then we did our color toning. Okay. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at that. Cool. Okay. So, as I mentioned, that is more of a portrait edit. Granted, it's taken a little bit longer because I've been talking through it, but the reality is you're doing that process, it's probably going to take you about 20 minutes. So it's not intensive, but yeah, a really great result, and a lot of those things can be actioned out in Photoshop as well. But yeah, that's it for the gel flare shot, guys.